Hi, everyone. Welcome to TechTO Quick Takes. I'm your host, Alex Reilly, and we are back with our first episode of the new year. Here are today's headlines. We are reviewing and analyzing our predictions for the upcoming year, including AI, the Canadian tech job market, tech transactions, and the funding market and what the future looks like. And to help me weigh in and analyze all of these points, Alex Norman is back to help break it down. Happy New Year, Alex.
Hey Alex, how you doing?
I'm good. I can't believe it's 2024 and we're, I guess, a few weeks into the month already.
Yeah, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I don't know. It
Mm-hmm.
just doesn't seem like. All I know is it's cold across Canada.
It is very cold. We finished 2023 in our last episode of the year, kind of discussing, I guess, trends or topics that people wanted to know if they were going to continue to be relevant in 2024. And we're sort of picking it back up in a different way and kicking it off with we're predicting how various topics are going to play out and how industries and things will evolve this year. First off, with I think one of the most popular last year and also this year is just AI. So, as much as we can anticipate and look ahead, a lot is going to continue to evolve and change over the next 350 or so odd days. But let's get into what we think significant developments will be and just key trends to watch. So,
Okay.
number one, productivity. We talked about this last year. How is this going to be something that will continue to save time and boost efficiency across the board for various jobs and
Okay.
industries?
So first of all, we're cheating a bit. We're already 2 weeks into the year.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like a bit late to be talking about predictions. Look. So here, I guess the question is, how do we see AI being used?
Yeah.
So we talk about productivity. I think and I guess there's two ways we're seeing it used. Productivity is the obvious one, the one that people talked about last year. So
Yeah.
last year, a lot of funding, the big, sexy, large number funding went to the actual models, right? The
Yeah.
second thing they started going to apps, and all these apps were focused on productivity. And I could break it into the obvious ones and the obvious ones. I think the obvious ones were like the co-pilots of the world. There was a lot of focus on let's do your job faster and better. It's
Yeah.
being a writer, getting ChatGPT to edit your writing, getting Strut to just make you more efficient. It's getting Spellbook for lawyers to provide an initial version of the contract or review the contract and find what's changed. So the first layer and where you saw a lot of funding and where the immediate productivity is to make someone and give them take either her or him to from a 20th percentile to 70th percentile by just improving the quality or by doing the stuff that they didn't want to do before, like the stuff that are repetitive, right? So
Mhm.
that's the first level of productivity. You
Yep.
saw all of that. I think the second thing where it gets more interesting is taking the whole workflow and basically making it disappear.
Yep.
So that's like, company I highlighted in the newsletter was Postalize. So one thing lots of salespeople do is they have to identify a customer, find a way to get them on a phone or an email and reach out to them. So with Postalize, it says, okay, you can say my target category is ABC. It creates a list, and then you can approve it or not. But it can basically go and start doing it and building that whole relationship. It only gets you involved when that sales call is needed. Maybe a future version does the whole initial sales of customer support. So I think what you're going to see is there's a lot. The next layer
Mm-hmm.
of productivity is actually removing the human from the loop and taking care of a whole chunk, and it's basically the output. I think you see a couple companies like that. Again, picking with a Canadian one, Even Up.
Yep.
They're creating the whole demand letter, so you're now able to eliminate a human from the whole input to output. And again, you probably want a human loop to check everything, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it makes teams much more productive.
Right. So, of course, like the things we've spoken about before, like the time saving and efficiency aspect, and also just how it's going to evolve traditional work in those workflows.
Let me pick apart that a bit better. So, like, I
Sure.
think there's two layers of productivity. The first one is doing what you do and
Mm-hmm.
eliminating parts of it or making parts of it much faster. The second one is eliminating a whole workflow and just having to deal with it, maybe prompt input and get the output.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a second degree of order of impact.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're going to start seeing.
So just we talked about the efficiency side, but what about funding? Obviously, we did see a lot of money for AI related startups and products and businesses last year. Is this going to impact the space still continuously? Will we see a change in terms
Well,
of funding?
so it depends on what you attribute to AI. So I think the AI models will continue to get large amount of capital.
Okay.
Whoever's doing video, whoever's doing whatever
Yeah.
fundamental models are needed, but I think those are going to happen less frequently, and the names will be more stable. Like you'll see the ones that are emerging winners get more and more capital, but they'll be less often, still big numbers. I think then you get the app layer or stuff that are built on using AI or the insights of AI. I think there was a premium for that last year. I think we're getting to the point where if you don't have AI, it's pretty shocking. So I think you'll see a lot of companies that are AI first get funding, but I think the premium they get will decline. So they won't be like, hey, everything else in the seed round is being done at, I don't know, let's call it 7 to 8. Now, because it's AI, it's 20.
Yeah.
So the funding will still happen. I think what it just implies it'll just be less. Everything's going to be AI enabled to a certain extent.
Okay. And obviously a few things to watch in terms of AI. Is there anything else or implications you just further want to highlight or outcomes you foresee?
So, when you take the productivity one, I think it's, not well understood. I think the first thing there is, I think it will change how lots of functions work and what functions are needed at a company, right? So, it will, but it'll also create new opportunities, and I don't know what they are yet. But this goes back to, if you're like 1995, lots of stuff used for creatives, like proofreading, got more significantly more automated, but created like there used to be a thing called Webmaster, which is now like 6 different roles from like UI and UX, right? So I think the productivity one is going to have a big impact on society. Some will be quick, some will be slow, and I think the roles and it'll be fastest seeing the startups who can adjust fastest. I think what else can we see from the implications? I think the implication is when the productivity is in a complete workflow and the output, you're going to see, instead of charging for a seat, like a traditional SaaS model, SaaS models try to always play with pricing, and most of them traditionally say, hey, it's for X number of seats, or humans using it, or maybe it's they try to align, hey, number of API calls. I think here the natural alignment is going to be in actually the output, right? So what I mean here is, let's pick one. Hey, number of clients acquired. Because if you're now eliminating, it's in a weird way, the more productivity you provide, the less seats you're selling. So you might want to now charge for the actual activity done. So like you see Intercom's charging for number of customer inquiries resolved without a human touch, right? I think they're charging like 99 cents. So you think about that, that goes, okay, that's a great deal. And one part of people are like, oh, that's crazy. Why would I pay $1 for each customer's solution solved? The more customer questions they solve, the more I'm paying them. But a human could probably get to 15 of these an hour. You're probably paying her or him $35 all in, so that's $2 an inquiry. Maybe to get to 3. So now you're paying. You can eliminate the overhead of people, is horrible to say, and you're paying significantly less. So it's going to be, the business model merge will be better aligned in a weird way, and you're paying some set of what you pay humans.
Right.
And I think that implies there's going to be leaner teams, especially at startups, right? Like if you can invest in paying $1 to get a customer service question answered, you'll probably still need a customer success team and a customer support team, but it'll be leaner and they'll be dealing with the more edge cases or more valuable customers.
Right. So as much as there's implications about leaner teams, there also, as you said before, which leads us into our next prediction, is it will create more jobs or more opportunities. We're not sure what those necessarily are yet, but obviously anyone that I think has an understanding of artificial intelligence and how to use it efficiently, again, for all those points you made, there's probably going to be a need for hiring individuals like that. So for the next 2024 prediction, this one I'm interested to hear your takes as well, because obviously we saw a lot of changes and shifts in the job market last year, and halfway through the month we've obviously seen more adjustments happen to this prediction. And I mean, sadly, we're seeing more layoffs. Most recently, Google laying off a large portion of their workforce. Why, even just so early into the year, why are we still, in your opinion, seeing these surges?
So I guess I'm glad we get to flush this out via conversation on the podcast or video. because I think trying to write it in a succinct article is very hard to get at what's going on. So
I think it's also hard emotionally to come across with, obviously it's a human cost and a human aspect too, right?
yeah, well, yeah, and there's a reason that emotions and sensationalism why largely us get all the attention on Twitter or Globe and
Yeah.
Mail. So let's start with those headlines. Let's again, it's always take context where they're coming from. So, and we've discussed this before, but companies, late stage companies and public market companies were getting paid for growth. That's what they're being valued on in 2021. So all through 2020 and probably till the 2022, they had all this aggressive growth plans where they were paying ahead and they were recruiting ahead of time and just to get the people so they can continue to grow. They didn't want to say, hey, we had a bad quarter because we couldn't fill these jobs.
Yeah.
So you had all these wealth and companies could do this. They were getting funded at these crazy valuations. So they'd raise $400 million. So lots of late stage companies, anyone from Discord to Hopin to Google, if you look at the numbers from 2020 to 2022, most of them doubled, if not more, and overhead on headcount. And so what happened? Ended somewhere in 2022 to end of 2023. Lots of the large public companies cut people, and they're like, "Hey, we're not going to." Meta said we're not going to put as much into the metaverse. Discord, like an app, and hey, maybe we have, the sales productivity is not where we need it. Let's get rid of the bottom third. And there was a feeling I had at the end of the last year that we were through those cuts, but we saw in the first few weeks of the year, there was, I guess, people reviewed again coming into the year. So the public company said, hey, there's still, let's get rid of the underperformers or the categories we don't think we can grow into justifying. So like if it's like metaverse seems to be de-emphasized at Meta. Amazon had a lot of people at one point in the Alexa division, right? And they said, hey, maybe there's not a use case here, and because the markets want to see not only growth, but they want to see growth and good economics. Then what's happened with the private, I feel like lots of the late stage private companies that raised a lot of money, they went through the same exercise. They said, hey, we still have a bit of, not necessarily, we're not fat, we don't have too many people, but we're, we want to give, sort of like be a bit fitter. So let's get out of the excess or the low performing people or the divisions, the stuff that aren't priority anymore, and then probably backfill where we think we need better, where it's more of an emphasis. So I think the headlines that go to like Discord or Twitter, everyone continue to fire, and I think we'll continue to see that in the market. The flip side is what doesn't get talked about. I think once a week, I'm getting an inbound from either a company in my portfolio, or I'm either talking with a later stage company in my portfolio, or I'm an inbound to someone that's looking at Canada and going, hey, Alex, we have 30 or 50 open positions. 10 of them are on our website. The other 20 we don't want to put up because we get lots of bad inquiries, but we can't fill these positions.
Yeah.
What's a great company at a startup in the pre-seed round or seed round that we can go acquire? I've also know of conversations with other companies that are in that situation where that the company may not be able to raise, they have great technology for various reasons, the market's not funding them, who 12 months ago would just have to close up shop, where they now have 2 or 3 or 4 acquirers looking at the company. And I've seen multiple late stage companies asking me who can they acquire. I've seen multiple early stage companies in acquisition talks. And why is because the talent these companies are looking for is not, they can't find it now. That's, you're probably thinking, hey, you just told me lots of people are getting laid off.
Yeah.
So what's the mismatch? I think there's a couple things. One is the roles, like AI, the roles may not be enough people out there still, right? Because there's a mismatch and the market adjusts. Yep. I think second of all, I think startups are being much more conscious about the culturally fit of a person, right? And so someone that has got a career and she's worked at, let's say, in sales at a bunch of late stage companies may not be a fit to be that second hire as a salesperson early stage. So what we're seeing is these headlines of people getting laid off, and I think they'll continue for a bit, but those will eventually taper off because these companies, and some of it's just redefining a strategy, some is just they hired too much and they still have access to get rid of. But at the same time, I'm hearing signals from the market where, hey, we can't find people.
Okay. That's interesting that you're seeing both sides of the coin. That was sort of my next question, which you just said you do see it perhaps tapering off, because I was going to ask, do you see more of these headlines? Do you see it progressively improving, which you alluded obviously we're hopeful that it will. And
Well,
it will
look, again, if we have a recession,
yeah,
and there'll be some people affected, right?
of course. Yeah.
And again, the big companies are so big that they can continue to grow faster in the economy, but they can't necessarily grow. Like they're affected by stuff too, right? So there's probably always going to be large tech companies laying people off, but
Right. Right. I mean, on the flip side, rapidly growing or doing the opposite. You did touch a little bit too on the last points just about, and also in our last headline too about AI. And I kind of brought up just AI specific roles and how perhaps with AI creating those workflows and efficiencies, it's opening up as well the potential for other jobs for like AI specialists, for example, or things like that. Do you see this becoming important, becoming a trend, or just really taking off for
Well,
people that are looking for roles?
the market's always changing what it wants, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you go back 20 years, if you're an SEO or SEM expert, there wasn't enough people knowing that, doing like search engine optimization, search engine marketing. Those are still in demand, but probably the market's, looking, there's more, how do I say, nuance in what people are looking for there, right? Then 10 years ago or 8 years ago was social media marketers. Now it's probably like, if you just go, there's probably people looking for how do we inject into prompts and how do we get short-term, get relevance on TikTok, right? So the roles and the skills people want for the individual contributors are always changing, right? Even the senior roles are probably more consistent. There are people are just looking for, can you bring talent? Can you do your job well? Do you know how to lead the vision, right? So like, if you're have experience with LLMs, you're very valuable, right? If you've validated, you know how to build a sales team, you're valuable, right? I think specific skills change. I think there's some roles are less in demand than they were before. I also think one thing that's sort of implicitly haven't discussed is I think the market is more robust than it appears on the surface. I think a lot of people are not explicitly putting roles out there. They want, because there is still a lot of people out there that are they're silently looking for roles and not putting on their startups website. So you have to really, the market, you can get hired better than you could 12 months ago, but you have to be working your network, coming to TechTO or being in forums, building relationships so you're top of mind when a position comes in and people know why you. Like, I think individual positioning is underrated. People don't talk about their soft skills and the actual ability to deliver value enough. I think I see lots of applications come into cold. First of all, if you have it's not clear what this person, why they're best in class and what they're best in class at.
Well, I think it's important to highlight the networking aspect of it too, because it is hard, as you said, to tell like someone's qualities or their capabilities for the job just by, even a resume or doing something virtually. So that's why TechTOs are also important too, right? Get out and meet people.
And I think one other thing is, which we didn't touch upon, is what does this mean for salaries? What does this mean for benefits?
Yeah.
I think salaries are down from their peak. I don't think they're going to go jump up quickly because there is enough slack in the market and people feel like they've overpaid. I think also the benefits are different, right? Like, I feel like a lot of founders feel like they didn't create, they sold, instead of selling culture, they sold perks. And so now it's more like, we want people who want to be mission aligned, want to deliver stuff, keep your your personal political views outside the company much more than it was 24 months ago. We don't want to hear, that, whatever that may be. And you're going to benefit from like us kicking ass. And I think it's much more, you're coming here because you believe in the company. We're going to pay you decently. We're not going to pay you over the top. And you're going to make money with us when we all succeed. I think that's a lot more company employee alignment, at least in the founder's perspective.
It's a good point because it's been a while since I've applied for a job, but I remember it was, the mental health days and the sort of, I guess, intangible things that added to the perks of why you'd want to join, aside from believing in the mission or liking the role. Just something I want to bring up that you mentioned before is just the flip side. There's companies that are shrinking and they're laying people off and they're letting go of talent, but also the hiring has been a struggle. Why do you think there's still such a struggle in terms of, the demands of filling the roles?
Just because it's a matching problem. right? Like it's looking for talent. It's looking also for the right cultural fit. And, you know, Amazon has a position available. It's on their website. They have it on LinkedIn. There's always, people always know to look for Amazon, right?
Because it's Amazon.
Because it's Amazon, and
Yeah.
they even now, I'm sure. Again, I haven't looked at their website. I'm sure there's probably 1,000+ jobs listed on there, based in Toronto, serving, I don't know, the vertically serves insurance brokers. Distributions out there. People don't look proactively for your name.
Mm-hmm.
They may have it listed slightly different. It's a matching problem, right?
Or
It's
if you
just,
are serving a niche market, sorry, I should have
yeah,
said, as a startup.
yeah. It's a matching problem. It's people aware of the job, and people in the founder or team is aware that you exist.
Okay. And just anything else that you want to point out in regards to the job market, or I don't know, helpful advice to leave anyone with that also might be in a position that they're looking for a job right now?
Be positive. Get a support system, right? Like even in the best of times, it's not easy to find a job. I think it's not the worst of times. I don't think it's the best of times, and I think it's a good point to reflect on what are you really trying to achieve out of your career, and how do you position yourself for success. And I think, you know, in the funny way, the worst time to be hard is when everything's going well, because you just chase the perks, and it becomes a very transactional in
Mm-hmm.
nature. And I'm not saying that companies take care of employees and reward them. You know, you should look out for yourself, but I think when you're looking, the better you know what you want, and the better you know how you can position yourself to be valuable, the more likely to become, you know, a position that you thrive in and love. And that's what leads to, you know, thriving in something and enjoying it. You
Yeah.
know, you don't necessarily enjoy what you thrive in, and you don't necessarily thrive in what you enjoy in. But if you can combine those two, you're ready for success.
Yeah. I have a few people that I know that are currently job hunting, and they say it's almost sometimes better when there's less available, because when there's too much, I think, available or in, your realm or your reality, sometimes it's a little bit harder to, as you said, find what it is you want to do and where you want your career to go, because there's just so much opportunity available. So tech transactions, and again, interested to get your perspective on this. Just what might occur or transpire in terms of transactions for the Canadian tech market. IPOs, let's start there. Do you see a resurgence of this
Well,
again in 2024?
again, from what I hear in the market, there's a few companies that have filed or getting ready to go public, and there is quite a few companies in Canada that have 9 figures revenue, growing well, and have a positive bottom line. And so I think in any market, those should be receptive. I think as the market improves a bit and stabilizes, they'll go public. I don't know if it's
Okay.
Q2, Q3, Q4, but I think you will see them. And I think the good thing is I think they're going to be bigger exits than we saw in 2021. They won't be driven by the hype of COVID and demand for everyone to trade everything. I think these will be solid companies, whether we're tech or not. And when they go public, they'll have a choice which market they go public on. I think they'll be well received.
Okay.
Again, not financial advice.
Yeah, not financial advice. Right on. In terms of acquisitions now, do you see, again, large tech players remaining active in terms of acquisitions? Do you see maybe another player in the mix? Like, how would you foresee acquisitions for this year?
I think we're going to see what we saw last year and a bit of the year before that is the companies that are large, that are private, but not the mega caps, especially in Canada. That's basically Shopify. But like you'll see the players that have solid businesses that can acquire distribution or products or customers cost effectively, use the currency to continue scaling up. And I think there's been a few companies that have proven they're willing to do that. Certain's a perfect example, right? Based out of Victoria, they've been slowly expanding their geography reach. They've been expanding their product roadmap, tucking in companies. They probably have, my guess is they have strong numbers. And if they either can acquire for little cash or for using their currency as, their stock as a currency, I think you'll see I think you'll see more acquisitions throughout the year as more companies, smaller companies, realize it's time to exit.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about just predictions for early stage companies, because I think there was a few headlines last year towards the end of the year about a few of them being acquired, and you saying that was sort of where you saw maybe the future going.
Yeah. So again, I think you'll see, look, there's a lot of companies have impairments from 2021. And I mean by that, like they may have built a successful business, a valid business or valid customer base, and historically would be able to raise, but they raised at a 2021 valuation, were not capital efficient because the market was not encouraging that, and are still there because they had a lot of cash. They were able to raise either, raise what they charge customers and cut some employees and extend their runway, are now looking going, hey, we're not going to be able to grow into the next valuation. Because of that, people are kind of hesitant. We have a real business here. Let's get acquired. Let's figure out where the best landing spot for this is and make, some returns for investors. I think also as there'll be acqui-hires, which are, the 3 to 5 person, maybe 10-person team, usually predominantly engineers,
right,
that have shown the ability to build a product that are going to get acquired just because people want the talent density.
Right. And just lastly, I know why people like to listen to this show and like to hear your takes is just they want to know the implications and the future of the ecosystem. So, what does 2024 look like for people working in tech or who are interested in investments and things like that?
Well, as much as we hate to see companies disappear,
yeah,
I think, having, I think it's actually a good thing. I think we're going to end the year. If we have a few companies go public, we have lots of the companies on last legs cleaned out, for lack of a better word. I think we're going to end up and be entering 2025 with a more positive attitude, a more robust ecosystem where there's been money made, where people in situations that they were dreading every month, is this the last month out of the, out. And so it'll just be a healthier ecosystem. I think the fact that there'll be some liquidity will give people confidence, either institutions or high net worth individuals, to become investors again. It'll encourage employees who've made money off the liquidity events to become, investors. So you're going to see a bit more cash come into the ecosystem, and then I think you'll see more companies get started. Especially what you'll see is people freed up from their past company. They shut down, but they've now got experience to know, hey, if I'm going to start something, this is what I need to do. And so I think you'll see a next generation of startups, more just startups being generated than we did in the last 12 months. Mm-hmm. And the experience will pay off. And then finally, some people will say, hey, I don't like this whole risk of a startup scene. I'm going to go back work in corporate Canada.
Right. Or something that's maybe a little bit more of a larger or more established organization. Okay. And just to, I guess, keep it rolling and stay on the more of the monetary focused subject. So Canadian venture funding landscape, again, this is right up your alley. I'm sure you have a lot to say about this, but just in terms of, let's start with fund deployment. What are you predicting in terms of investments for this year?
Well, so there's two ways. There's money going into funds.
Yep.
So new funds, and I think there's money coming in the funds in the companies. So, there's a lot less capital raised in the last 2 years by venture funds across the world than there was the previous 2 years. Mm-hmm. Part of this is lack of liquidity. I think one thing that's unique in Canada is we have the Vicky Fund, which is a government that goes into these fund of funds that then has to get deployed in the funds. And the last round was announced, I think, in 2022, and the fund of funds were picked in 2023. I think just the funding cycle is a bit slower. So I think their capital is going to net new funds in 2024, which will start deploying that money in 24. I think also lots of funds may have pushed off fundraising in 23.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's probably going to be some net new capital going into funds in 2024, at least more than there was in 2023. So I think that also implies that, as the market stabilizes, these funds know that they have more funds capital coming in, they'll start deploying maybe a bit more rapid pace. Again, I don't think it should impact how a manager deploys capital, but if they don't have capital, they can't deploy. So if they have capital and they didn't have before, it's going to lead to more investments.
Right. And just, I guess in terms of, we just kind of talked about, IPOs and public companies, and just to go into maybe the tech stock market outlook, you can just keep this high level if you want. Is this going to be positive for 2024?
Well, let me rechange this question. I think 2023 saw general movement in the tech stock market up on the public market, and usually we see the private markets are 12 to 24 months behind. So if the market stabilizes and the public markets stay at these higher valuations, you'll see more investments in the later stage and of the private market in Canada.
In 2024, is there also perhaps a rise of non-software ventures, things heading back towards hardware and deep tech? I know we talked a lot about deep tech and also climate tech last year as well. What are your thoughts?
I think you're going to see you had some exits in hardware in Canada. You had Clearpath Robotics exit for what looks like a good exit. You've had I think there's a desire, and like you've seen some other deep tech or hard sectors emerge in the last few years. Defense technology, unfortunately, seems much more appealing than it did 6 years ago or 5 years ago with wars around the world.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I think you're seeing some investors realize that AI can power new models for hardware. And I think the climate change is not going anywhere. So I think there's a bunch of different ways. You're going to see deep tech, hardware, robotics. I think there's a lot more interest in these businesses and business models than there was when everything was SaaS and and SaaS was doing well. So I think you're going to see diversification will get invested in.
And then just lastly, to kind of wrap things up, any just final pieces of advice, feedback, takeaways?
That the money deployed in the companies is increased. May not be a huge increase in numbers of deals, but if you just see a few more late stage deals increase the numbers, again, we won't be anywhere near the 2021 peak, but I think this year will be positive momentum for slight uptick in number of deals financed, but a significant uptick in late stage deals, which will create the number of amount deployed in the VC in Canada to look bigger. I think early stage valuations are likely to remain stable. And it's that plus, which is interesting because if they remain stable and you're more efficient, because we talked about AI making companies more productive, there'll be much more focus on the capital efficiency of startups, and they could raise money and last a bit longer than they have historically. So I think there's nowhere upward pressure on early stage startups right now. And I think like broader range of companies are going to get financed.
Awesome. And I think you just wanted to make one more call out about the predictions in general for anyone that's listening too.
Yeah. If you have a prediction, share it with us, put it on social media.
Yeah, I think we're encouraging a lot more, we're doing a lot more crowdsourcing, I should say, in terms of not just the news that we think is interesting and would benefit the ecosystem, but of course, what people want to be hearing about. And I've made note that 6 months from now, I think we should come back and just really review the predictions.
Do you want to make me look bad?
No, it's predictions. We're not telling the future. It's just what we think might transpire. And it's obviously our opinion, but it would more so, I think, be interesting for us to see what has changed or evolved further. But I have a feeling that you are probably in a lot of ways correct about this. So you might be surprised. It might make you look even better. So there you go.
Yeah.
And just to wrap up, just some events coming up we want to let the community know about. This week, January 17th, our first of the year, we're back at Rotman. Very excited to bring another Together event to our community. And then also at Rotman on February 12th. And we have a TechTO Marketing February 26th. And then Best of TechTO back at City Hall on March 18th. So lots to look forward to, and tickets and the link to that will be in the show notes and on our website, of course. Final thoughts before we go, Alex?
Looking forward to seeing a lot of people out there this year. We're going to try to hopefully be across the country more often. We want also, don't be shy to ping us about a question or a news event or something you want to take on, or if you have a take, share it with us and hopefully we'll talk about it.
Yeah, that would be fun. Awesome. Well, as always, thanks, Alex. Great to kick off 2024 with you. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you are listening to this podcast. We will be back to our regular scheduled time and releasing a new episode next week on Thursday. But until then, we'll see you on the inside.
We're in the business of delivering impossible things. We're in the business of delivering things that nobody's ever seen before.
If you build that culture, you'll come up with really cool and innovative stuff, and literally could be in the next multi-billion-dollar idea. So this conversation is largely going to be about scaling yourself and scaling your leadership team.
I want to talk about one of the biggest struggles that I think a lot of startups face early on, which is building initial traction.